Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vella-Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vella-Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the Smart Talk series. I'm Melissa Vella-Williamson. This season, our focus is on Latinas in public relations. Today, I'm joined by two guests, Rachel Benavidez and Lilly Cortés Wyatt. Rachel is a former journalist turned public relations and marketing professional who brings more than 25 years of experience to her role as Vice President of Communications and Strategy for VIA Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio. The local PRSA Chapter named Rachel PR Professional of the Year in 2023, and in 2024, elected her president to lead in 2025. She's a Rio Grande Valley native who has lived in San Antonio since 2008, with roles as editor-in-chief at San Antonio Magazine and city editor at the San Antonio Express News. Lilly is the founder of SociosPR, an integrated communications firm known for its expertise in multicultural strategies and cultural competence. Drawing from her journalism background, Lilly leads a team with over a century of combined experience delivering tailored, human-centered communication solutions. With a commitment to diversity in thought and approach, Lilly offers insights that are intersectional, socially conscious, and environmentally aware, empowering clients to connect authentically with diverse audiences. Welcome, Rachel and Lilly.
Thank you, Melissa. It's great to be here talking with you all about some very, very important topics, particularly how we do PR.
It's so fun to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us, Melissa.
Oh, absolutely. Totally my pleasure and honor. And I cannot wait to dig into your backgrounds a little bit more. So let's learn more about your origin stories. How did you get into public relations and what's your work like today?
Well, Melissa, my first quote grown-up job was actually in journalism, and I was writing for my hometown paper. I eventually moved into leadership within the news and magazine industry, like you said in my introduction, joining boards and other professional organizations. And as the industry changed, I was able to see, and in some cases influence, trends that were changing the profession, journalism. The work in media, print media in particular, isn't what it was even 20 years ago. But in 2014, I decided that those changes were not the direction I wanted to grow in. So I decided to make a change, and I joined a local PR marketing agency. And within a year, I moved to agency side, from the agency side to client work, joining VIA in 2015. That's really sort of the chronology, right? If you go through my resume, you'll be able to see that. But the truth is that I've probably been in love with words my whole life. I learned to read very young. I tried to write very young. I remember writing and illustrating my own books as a child. And the truth is that as a reader and a writer and an editor, and now as a communicator, I feel like if getting into PR and the discipline of PR and communications and bringing what I learned in journalism and what I loved as a child is really sort of a full circle moment for me. It's incredibly fulfilling to be able to use my talents and stay in love with words, right? In order to help people, to influence outcomes, to tell stories, especially. And so with time, I've really learned to see my move from journalism to public relations and marketing as a career evolution, not really a swap, one for the other. It's all under the communications umbrella, and I've always been a communicator. What's changed is the medium that I use, the industry to which I belong, the title that I'm given, et cetera. The function remains, right? As a professional to research, curate, construct, distribute accurate, relevant, timely information to the communities that we serve, right? I began my career as a reporter and editor, and I've spent the last 10 plus years in marketing and PR, and I'm growing now as my role as a strategist. I'd hope to continue to be successful in that realm as well. So I kind of think of myself as a snowball, right? Collecting knowledge and experience from each job that I've had and rolling it into the next opportunity, building a larger competency base, expertise, proficiencies, growing as a leader in my field. But I'll tell you, the thing that keeps me passionate about being a communicator really is connecting to the community. And my job at VIA helps me do that. We're not just telling stories about the services and programs that we offer, but we're telling the stories about the community that we serve. and what mobility does and how putting opportunity within reach uplifts those communities. Those are the things that drive me now at this phase of my career.
Yeah, absolutely. Words have a lot of power, and truly, it has the power to move people. And you literally do that at work, Rachel. So kudos to you and in making that happen. And I love the idea of the snowball, right? Because it does start small, it gains traction. And let me tell you what, Rachel, Rachel is a force. And so we're so happy to have you on our side and working for the good of our community, Rachel. Lily,
Thank you.
tell us about your work, your origin story, what you're up to today.
Thank you so much. Well, like Rachel, I also, my background is also journalism, but it's actually broadcast journalism. I spent a good 15 years as a journalist, going from, as an intern, assignment editor, writer, producer, executive producer, host, reporter, you name it. I did it all, even edit. I'm still in love with visual storytelling, and that's something that we actually do at SociosPR in my agency. I do have to say, when I left my journalism career, I felt like I lost my identity. I had been doing that for so long, since even before graduating college. And that was part of me. That was who I was. And I kind of took a odd job here and there to see what would really resonate with my inner being and my inner passion. That's when I found public relations. There were a lot of independent practitioners or PR consultants in the Sacramento region that came to me and said, Lily, you have everything. You have every knowledge, skill, and ability to be able to consult. And I doubted myself. I was like, no, I cannot have a client. And long story short, I took a job with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services here in California, which really helped me with my confidence, because I felt like I knew so much more than the people that were working within the Department of Communications. I helped with crisis communications. I did media training because they were feeling like they didn't even know how to talk to the media. And I was like, hey, you know what? Our media is just people. We're not your enemies. And they're like, everybody had the perception that media was your enemy, that they were just trying to get you. And I was like, no, they're not. We all just have a job to do. And yes, while some people may have those hard questions, you're always in control of your message. So I fell in love with media training. Again, visual storytelling. I was an on-the-record spokesperson, and I just loved public relations. All 12 functions of public relations I fell in love with, and not knowing that that was public relations. You know what I mean? Then after that, actually on the job, I was recruited to be the director of communications and marketing for the American Red Cross, which was very exhilarating because I was at every disaster. I felt like a reporter, basically. I felt like I was doing what I needed to do. I was communicating the message. I was helping the community. I was engaging with the community, and I was sharing the good work that the American Red Cross was doing. So I was an on the record spokesperson in both English and Spanish. And again, it was one of those work jobs that reinforced my love for public relations and communications and marketing. And in 2016, I decided to launch SociosPR. One thing that I forgot to send you before you read the introduction is that we were honored last year that my organization, SociosPR, won the PRSA Influential Organization of the Year. And it was basically a dream come true. I wrote that in my vision board in 2016. And 9 years later, I got to win the award, which is really exciting. So right now, we help associations, government organizations, and private enterprises with their integrated marketing communication strategies, as well as implementation. And what I really am proud of is that I'm the only Latina-owned communications firm in Northern California, in the Sacramento region. So anywhere within the radius of the capital of California, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, I'm the only Latina-owned public relations firm. So that's something to be proud of. Before I was like, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I'm like, hey, it matters because everyone goes to LA. Yes, LA has 46% of the population in LA is Hispanic, but in Sacramento, we are the most diverse city in the country. And we have to be able to have omnicultural communications to speak to the audiences, not just in their language as a translation, but also just, really connecting. I call it the Macarena of communications, which is, talking to the heart, mind, and wallet. So get to the heart, engage the mind, and earn the wallet. So that's what we try to bake cultural insights into the DNA of our clients.
Lily, everyone's going da taka da taka da taka da da. Eh,
Macarena, Macarena. Ah.
Exactly. Well, and I think that, you bring up some really good points, both of you. And Lily, I appreciate that you mentioned that you were the only Latina owned because one, I hope that inspires other Latinas to join in. It before I had my own business, my own firm, I think I thought like other employees, like, oh my gosh, what a huge risk that is to take. And it's so hard. And I just put these other people I knew on pedestals, right? They must have something I don't have or know something I don't know. So I've been very committed to kind of catch up professionally on the ground with PRSA and other continuing education sources to learn the things that I didn't learn when I was in college. And then over time, as I met other solopreneurs or freelancers or independents or agency owners, like it's almost whatever you wanted to identify as. If you were making your own money doing public relations, it was inspiring to me, but also enlightening that, these aren't perfect people. They don't have it all figured out and they're just taking it step by step, or like Rachel said, like every little inch by inch adding to their snowball and gaining some traction. So I appreciate you mentioned that. And it's very much in alignment with my introduction for the book that we're going to be talking about today, Latinas in Public Relations. Because in the intro, I talk about how in San Antonio, where Rachel and I are based right now, we are said to be, by our local newspaper, the largest Hispanic majority city in the U.S. And even within our community, while I may meet other Latinos and Latinas working in our space, when I was trying to find someone who was bilingual and an independent to work with, for example, I couldn't. It's still a challenge here. And to me, I say in my writing, like, hey, twice the language, right? It shouldn't be twice the economy, twice the money, twice the ganas. Like, let's go. And so I hope that with our conversation today and your stories in the book, it inspires people to just, imagine things for yourself, whether that is entrepreneurship or not.
Yeah, and also just stepping up. Like, I mean, I'm not even going to preach to the choir. We know the statistics that women and Latinas are not at the seat of the table on big, large corporations' board of directors. So I hope that your book, that our book, The Latinas in Public Relations, Shaping Communications, Communities, and Culture, are able to encourage those, in our circles to step up and to get involved. I'm so grateful that this book exists because we're going to be able to share our stories and encourage them. Like, and you are absolutely right, Melissa. We don't have it all figured out, but you don't have to be able to step up in a leadership role, and then you can actually learn while on the job. Like that's the kind of position, just like you, when I started my business, I didn't go to a business administration school, and I'm doing a lot of business administration. In fact, half of the time that I spend running SociosPR is managing the business. I'm not doing a lot of client work. I'm still doing client work, but most of the time is managing the business. And you're absolutely right. It's getting those getting our Latinos, just encouraging them and motivating our communities to take risks, to just elevate and believe in themselves. We know that we do. We just need to show up even more and be present.
Melissa, I couldn't agree more with so many of the points that Lily made. I think, Lily, first, I want you to do my vision board first. I mean, you need to make a trip down to San Antonio to help me.
Got it. You got it.
But what you said really resonates. We came over from journalism and we have to rely on the strengths that we know. And really what I realize is the lesson is how to apply them, right? So you talk about crisis communication, which is like where I'm most comfortable. Might make me odd to be most comfortable in a crisis, but the truth is I know how to respond and use the skills that I've had the longest when responding to a crisis, because what you learn in journalism about prioritizing information, creating a hierarchy, understanding what the needs of communicating to your audience are, all of those things are critical in crisis communications. And so I've learned to apply that. And that's just an example of what you bring with you, right? And as Latinas, and first, let me give a shout out, Melissa. You said we are in San Antonio, Texas. We love our city. We love our community. So many of the boards that I sit on and the boards, major boards in the city, are being chaired currently by Latina. Our Brooks Development Board is being chaired by Latina. CPS Energy, our energy provider here, is being chaired by a Latina. The VIA board where I work is being chaired by a Latina. All powerful, strong women representing different areas, including PR on one of them. And so I feel like if having Latinas in leadership roles strengthens, it doesn't dilute. It should be the same perspective for communities, for business development, for workforce development, for arts, for all of these things. I think having Latinas and diversity in general is a strengthening point, not something that dilutes. And we are changing that narrative, I think. By example, we're showing the strength that we can bring through diversity, particularly having a Latina perspective in areas where we may not be completely, it may not have proportionate representation. Melissa, you and I have talked a lot about how representation matters. And I think what your book is doing and what these discussions are doing is showing how and why, and the different perspectives about how representation changes the conversation. So I wanted to thank you for that, and thank Lilly for making such great points.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really important, especially in what's kind of happening in our country today, that in some ways that, we stand our ground and say, this is work we're doing, right? Not here to We're here to bring people together, to unify, to calm, to ground, to handle the issues, like you said, Rachel, to handle the crises, but in the same way, to proudly represent what we have to offer as people, as professionals. I think
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think publishing is a great way to kind of mainstream and scale the mentoring and the support and sometimes intervention that people have, particularly young people. So I'm so glad you're on this journey. Well, let's tell everyone what we're talking about a little bit more. So you two have authored chapters and are sharing your story in the book, like Lily shared, Latinas in Public Relations, Shaping Communications, Communities, and Culture. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to share that story. Like, what was your why?
Melissa, first, I was just so excited and honored to be included, right? The excitement was the first emotion. And then it was, uh-oh,
Mm.
what am I going to write about? How am I going to tell my story? And so I feel like, and I've mentioned this to you also, that it was an exercise in self-reflection, self-investigation, right? And telling my own narrative. As a storyteller, it should have been the most natural thing to do, but honestly, telling the story about myself, and I suspect a lot of our fellow authors might echo this, it's harder to talk about yourself than it is to tell someone else's story, especially when you're a writer first. And so I loved writing it. But exploring it and rewriting it, it was a process for me, and it was just writing it was a journey. I wanted to share it because of all the reasons that I said. Representation does matter. Telling stories from our perspective does matter. And you and I had a conversation asking ourselves, am I a Latina in public relations, or am I doing Latino public relations? And you think about that. And really it's both. It's yes and. I am a Latina, so my perspective is always going to be different. The way that I was raised, the things that I learned, how I learned them, the way that I'm perceived, the experiences that I've had in corporate environments and in different working for large organizations, all of those things are influenced by my Latinidad, right? We talked about this word is sort of like discovering how does your culture and heritage and how you experienced and those lived experiences, how do they influence your professional life? And so writing this chapter actually started to open up a lot of self-awareness and self-reflection that I'm really grateful for. And then the editor in me kicked in. I was an editor longer than I was a writer, probably in journalism. And I started to rewrite and edit. And if you send it back to me again, I'm going to make changes. So I'm going to warn you not to send it back to me again.
No, we're done,
Unless you want,
Rachel.
unless you want new edits. Yes. But one of the things that I realize now is that probably might have changed the headline on it because I talk about one of the things in the headline says about switching teams, and that references my second career in communications versus or PR versus journalism. But what I realized is what I was really doing is expanding the field. We talk a lot as a hiring manager and an executive on the team here about utility players, people who can play any position on the team. And the truth is that making the switch from a journalism career to a public relations career or communications and marketing career was really just expanding my playbook, right? Learning different positions on the same field. And I've learned to see the field as communications in general. We have different professions and industries that are defined, but do they define us or do we define it in terms of how we practice, right? What our best skills are, how we offer our best talents. So I write a lot about that, of course. Like any good Latina, I talk about how my mother, right, helped shape me and influence my life, and growing up in the Rio Grande Valley along the Texas-Mexico border, and all of the things that you learn and maybe sometimes have to unlearn in order to not just leave where you're from, where you came from, but learn where you want to go. And I've always said this, where you come from doesn't necessarily determine how far you can go. And the truth is that my upbringing in the Rio Grande Valley really made me a strong person, a strong woman, helped me to connect to my Latina identity early. But it wasn't until I left, I had to leave to be able to look in the rearview mirror and understand how those things influence me today. And so I write a little bit about that, but thank you so much for that opportunity.
Yeah, I really love that. There's many, many things you bring up that are in other authors' stories. I think you all be so delighted to kind of see yourself in other people's stories. And that I think is why representation is powerful, no matter what you're seeing in someone else that relates to you, right? I think we think a little bit too much about our, ethnicity sometimes in this country, but it's what do you have in common that sometimes people are like, I like dogs too. Rachel and I found out we had Pomeranians. We're like, hey. So, it always depends, but those connection points really matter. Lilly, tell us about your story. What inspired you to write it? A little bit about what's inside of it.
Oh my goodness, so many beautiful things that Rachel shared. And really, what excites me the most about the book is reading everybody's story that is shared with how many authors, Melissa? Is it 12 or 15?
It is me and 14 of my best new friends.
And what I really, why I wanted to share my story is that you don't have to have like this grandiose story. Like people will relate to each and every one of our stories because and we want to showcase that Latinidad is also different. Something that I share with my husband and with everybody that I meet is that, I may look a certain way, but you see my family and there's people that look, my own son, it looks like I hope I don't offend anybody. He looks total Japanese. Like he looks like a half Japanese, half like white boy. And I'm just like, that's my family. Like my twin sisters, kids look different. My cousins, they all look different. And that just shows that Latinidad, within Latinos, there's a melting pot. People have a stereotype and we need to break the stereotypes. And that's why I wanted to share the stories. Like, you know what? My story is not the same as so-and-so story. And just because I'm in the Central Valley and I support and applaud all the farm workers, but not all of us came to California to be a farm worker. We were born here, we had a different experience. So I want to show the world that we all are different, that we're all powerful. We all have different powerful stories, and we all are here to contribute to our economic development. And we're all here because we want to break our limiting beliefs. Like for me specifically, it was for that. Like you empower me to share that I could break the limiting beliefs that I had before that, I couldn't own an agency because I don't have the skills. It's like, no, I'm proving myself every day that I am a business owner and I can be in charge of my own destiny. So my goal and my hope is that it encourages other people to really believe in themselves, to believe in goodness, to believe in positivity, and to believe in the power of coming together as a community and lifting each other up and accepting each and everyone's just the way that we are. Because inside we're all the same. Like we have blood and bones. It doesn't matter what color, skin you have or hair or whatever, what your ethnicity is, but we're all the same inside. We all have a heart, we all have a mind, and we all have a soul. And really our purpose is to live a good life. And so I want to share in this book, and I wanted to share with this story, because, my 2 words of the year are joyful positivity or positively joyful, to live life that way, and to encourage each other, to encourage public relations professionals specifically to come together and just lift each other up.
Melissa, you have a word of the year. Lily, I need a word of the year, I think. I'm going to take nominations for my word of the year.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It's snowball. I like snowball. we're gonna just roll right through it, Rachel. No, my word of the year is lead, because even I love yours, Lily, and it brings me up because I want it to be ease and easy, but I was like, it's not gonna be an easy year. I'm gonna need to lead through it. And so I've just kind of centered myself on that. But really helpful insights you're sharing, Lily, and you're right, because everyone's story is different. And I kept being asked by some of the contributing authors, like, well, can we read each other's stories? How do we know we're not talking about the same thing? I'm like, you are different people. You will not talk about the same things.
Absolutely.
And even though they may relate, right? They may be different. Like Lily, I'm relating to the story you're telling us right now about your son and what he looks like. And sometimes that surprises people. When I had my daughter, she came out with a lighter shade of brown, very curly hair. At the time, I wasn't really wearing my hair very curly. And people were like, she also had bright blue eyes for like 2 years straight. And so I could not go anywhere with that little girl without people stopping us and saying, look at the Shirley Temple. And where did she get those eyes? I was asked, who's the father? One person asked me, like, are you her mother? And what's wild is that, one, that's inappropriate. And two, is that my mother, who's from the Rio Grande Valley, this is, a border town, as some people might imagine. If you're trying to imagine Texas, where's that? She faced a lot of colorism within her Hispanic community. And so she always said that when she had me, she has darker skin than I do. And that people would say, who's the muñeca? And are you the maid? They thought she was the maid. And so it just goes back to, look, a lot of these trials that we live through, like, we can understand them. And I think everyone is othered in some different environment and some community. And I think that if we can kind of understand that as people and as communicators, it'll help us walk forward better together. So I like that you mentioned these things.
Absolutely. Look, Melissa, we can't deny that within our own communities, our own Latino communities, we are our own rainbow, right? And there are issues about colorism and different things that we even struggle with as a Latino community within ourselves. But the truth is that having these platforms and talking about these things and bringing together different voices, different faces, different lived experiences, what you're really doing is helping to bring that to light, helping to untangle some of that, helping to raise awareness and acceptance, even if it's just among the niche of Latina professionals in public relations. That's why it's so important to have these conversations, for all of the reasons that you and Lily just mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I think it's really important that we can see people as these affinity or like related type groups, because then we can kind of go a little deeper in the conversation. And now I want to do that on the professional side too, right? So we're kind of normalizing and mainstreaming people like us in our profession and showing them as leaders and very naturally in these places. So I want to talk about the disciplines within PR and marketing, because as you all know, have experienced and learned, and we're continually seeing everything evolve, is that there's many different ways you can work in PR and marketing these days. So what area do you find yourself drawn to, or what do you specialize in and why?
It's interesting. When I started my agency, everyone knew me as the PR girl because of my broadcast journalism background. So my discipline for many, many years was media relations, media relations strategy, pitching, writing, connecting with the reporters, all that good stuff. But as the media relations world has changed, and as I have progressed as a professional, and just seeing the importance of communications more of an umbrella, being able to, and I'm going to quote a very known method, which is the PESO model. You have to have your messages resonate with both the paid media, the earned media, the shared media, and the owned media. And all your messages need to be integrated. The cloverleaf approach is very, very important. So I'm really focusing right now on, especially in 2025, is to do this strategy for the cloverleaf approach and be able to have your message across different channels and not really focus on media relations specifically, but really sharing your message across the board and sharing it with the audiences where they live, work, and play. And not just focus on, oh, let's just be on, a TV station on a morning show and have that as an objective, because we all know that that's not a good objective anyway. But yeah, that's where I'm really focusing this year on the integrated aspect of communications. I still love community relations. Why? Because we want to make a change. We want to have an impact. We want our communications to change behavior. Really, that's one of the ultimate goals of what I love PR for. But yes, I started in media relations. I'm going more towards an integrated approach.
I mentioned how I love words. Words matter. Words have power. Words have, they last, right? People say folks won't remember what you might have said to them or what you did in the moment, but they remember how you made them feel. And I struggle with that saying sometimes, although I agree completely that kindness and consideration and all of these things should always be part of our persona and in any profession. And people will always remember how you made them feel. But words have such a strength to do that. So I'll start by saying that speech writing and storytelling in written form is probably my first love. And it's where I started. It was my entry point from journalism into public relations and marketing. After 10 years at VIA and 12 years in the field, in this discipline of the field, I have started to grow into strategy as a strategist, as I mentioned earlier. There are so many different levels of communications, public relations that you go through. Lilly talked about media relations, right? And that's big and ever present. No matter what discipline or field that you move into, dealing with the media, I frame it as a pitching and catching scenario with a relationship, right? We pitch, they catch. Sometimes they throw it back, sometimes they drop it, but we pitch and they catch. And that's always going to be the way that this dynamic kind of works. But the truth is that landscape is also changing. Communicators, publicists, people in PR and marketing have so many ways now to connect directly with audiences, right? That the relationship with media itself is changing. It's still codependent and we still rely on each other, but the relationship is changing. And so that was also a very interesting part of my journey to where I am now, is learning how to connect directly with the audiences, leveraging new media, digital media, in-person experiences, experiential, marketing and engagement. Those types of things really sort of, again, strengthened and broadened the way that I connect with the constituencies and the audiences that we want to reach and the communities that we serve. Moving further into strategy really sort of is something that has evolved. And I know that there is a whole contingency of strategic communicators out there, and that it is a well-respected and developed discipline. I feel like time and experience and exposure has pushed me toward being more into the strategic communications area as a discipline. You should have strategy in everything that you do, and from what you wear to what you eat in a day, it should have a strategy behind it. But in a profession and in your work, and particularly in communications, looking at opportunities for how communication can strengthen our organization, how communications can elevate what we do here in a day and shine a light in areas that perhaps isn't always seen or known, or the strength or the contributions of a particular area aren't always highlighted. Looking at things strategically in terms of 10 steps ahead, if we talk to this person or involve that partner, create this relationship, and we communicate through that, how is that going to impact our mission, vision, goals, and strategy for an agency or for a client or for a project or whatever that may be? And you hear me talking about it in these sort of scenarios because, like I said, it's a developing side of what I love to do. But if you sit me down and tell me to write a speech today, that's the first thing I'm going to do when I get up in the morning. I really do love speech writing. I love hearing those words. I love when the community repeats your message back to you. Those to me are very satisfying moments. Don't get me wrong. You give me a microphone and I'll talk too. I'll deliver a speech just as fast as I'll write it. Right, because we're communicators, but learning how to navigate what I traditionally did as a written word professional to someone who now understands and can implement the way that words influence and can influence outcomes in a positive way, can inspire people to understand and even adopt the things and the programs and services, for example, that you may be offering or helping to create awareness of. It's so broad that it's really hard to define what my focus on any given day might be. But that's what I also love about what we do, right?
Yeah.
That it can be everything at once. What is that? Everything, everywhere, all at once. That feels like what PR and marketing and communications really kind of is. It's really how you define it, how you define yourself within it.
Yeah, the big word I'm hearing a lot this year is omnipresent. Wait, I can even say it.
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent. Okay, there's your word of the year, Rachel.
Yes, there's word of
Be
the
everywhere
omnipresent.
and everything all at once. And I think
All at once.
probably Latinas relate to that feeling a lot. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But being strategic about where you are, for what reason, why, and what that message is what I am challenging everyone to think about now. Is that you don't really have to be everywhere, all the time, all at once. In fact, it becomes very noisy. You want to be a little more focused in on, like Lilly said before, where are your people and how do they prefer to communicate and going in that direction. So it's like you said, Rachel, the game is a little bit of pitch and catch. And sometimes really media is pitching us an idea like, hey, we want to do a story on this or that. And we got to decide whether or not, to pick up that ball and run with it. And when it's all said and done, if we have better relationships with our different publics, right? Our media allies, our actual constituents, then they're more likely to play. And that's what we want to do. So that's the point here.
Absolutely. Keeping in mind always that we are in a relationship, right? We have the information that they need and we need them to distribute that information. And coming from journalism, my heart is always going to be in the newsroom. I still have friends in the newsroom, and though I may not always agree the way that a story is necessarily framed, who here has always loved the press that they get, right? The truth is, like I said, it's a relationship, and there should be respect. I love, Lilly, that you educated your team about that relationship, and not to see the media as an enemy necessarily or an adversary even. We should always value and champion transparency, right? And being forthcoming, owning even the things that have gone wrong, own that and move the conversation forward. That's the way that I've always treated that relationship. And even when I was on the desk as an editor, I tried to make sure to keep that in mind. There were some PR people that I encountered that I'd love to talk to today and say, now that I'm on your side of the fence, I know that that's not necessarily the best approach, but God bless them. Best of luck to them.
Bless your heart, as we say in the South.
Yes,
All right.
bless their heart.
Well, this was really great. And I want to make sure that we get in some of your advice because both of you sound like you have it all together now, ladies, right? We're all perfect and we know what we're doing here. But what advice would you share with someone who may be considering, look, I'm going to go after that promotion or I want to take a scary step forward in my career?
Oh my goodness. I just love what you said. We've got it all figured out. Yes, we do. My advice with someone who's considering going after a promotion is go after it. Believe in yourself. Believe in your power. Believe in your lived experiences and what the outcome will be. So if you're going after a promotion in your job, go to your boss and have the outcomes that you're going to have when you get that promotion. I would recommend for somebody that is going after the promotion to know the why. Why are you asking, what's the why? And how are you going to make the ROI for your employer or for your boss, like so that you can actually see how you're going to make an impact. And if my advice for somebody taking the big scary step is just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and do it. That's what I did, and I could not have. I have no regrets. Yes, the days sometimes are. All the days are different. You never know what's going to happen next, but it's so exciting when you take those big steps, when you take the scary steps, because they form you, they shape part of you integrally, like internally too, and they just make you stronger. Character develops perseverance, and perseverance develops faith. So you have to have, a stronger character, and it would just help you be a better person, and you're going to be so proud of yourself after you've done it.
Absolutely, Lily. You mentioned faith, and faith is taking a step when you can't see the ladder, right? Sometimes that's what you have to do. And honestly, my career has been defined by taking that step on faith. I got into journalism, air quotes, because my mom got sick and I had to come home and I had to get 3 jobs and work around my school schedule in order to support the family while she got better. And one of those jobs was typing obituaries at night for my hometown paper. I didn't intend for journalism to become a career. I never really even thought that that it could be, right? I was studying government and literature. I thought that I was going to work behind the scenes in a government office. That's what I
Aren't
wanted to do.
you? Aren't you doing?
Not officially. But working more directly with our elected leaders and things like this. And the truth is that once I started at that paper and I started to see all of the jobs of the jobs that the people around me were doing and learning those jobs. And within 5 years, I was blessed to be offered to be editor-in-chief of that paper because I fell in love with the written word and with journalism. But if I hadn't stepped out on faith and applied for the reporter job and applied for the night editor job and then applied for the dayside job and then the editor-in-chief job in quick succession, those opportunities would not have been made available to me. I applied for a job at the San Antonio Express News, with little experience at big papers, and I got that job, thankfully. When I wanted to leave journalism and go into PR, I simply asked for the opportunity, and I sought that opportunity, and I leveraged the relationships that I had built, which is really, really important, especially if you are planning a career, is to pay attention to the relationships that you're building and take care of those relationships, because those are the people that are going to help guide you. And perhaps also help you find an opportunity. I've always said when I've had the opportunity to speak to groups, particularly women and young women and students and other professionals also in our industry, is that it's really, really important to have someone who champions you at work, but it's also really important to have a sponsor, someone who's talking about you in rooms full of opportunities that you may not be in yet. And I've been really blessed to have that. I moved from PR into marketing without one day of marketing under my belt. Because I asked for that opportunity, and because when I talk about the work that I did, I'm not just talking about wanting people to recognize me on the merits of what I've accomplished, but wanting them to contextualize that in what I'm capable of, what's my potential, based on what I've been able to do. And I've always presented myself that way. And in the times that I haven't, there have been times where I said, no, don't, or no, maybe they won't choose me. I'll just choose another path. I've regretted it. Take that step, even if you can't see the ladder before you. Know what your strengths are and how to present them so that it's something that is attractive and interesting and that shows not just what you've accomplished, but what your potential to do is.
Oh, yes, all the finger snaps that I can do here, and y'all can't see me right now. But
Yeah, and if I can just say one more thing to all of our women listeners out there, there is an Equal Pay Act, and I just want to. Yesterday I was at an event for Latina and Black women entrepreneurs, and we talked about the Equal Pay Act and how so many of us women, if we have a job, we don't ask for a promotion or an increase in salary because we're afraid, or oh no, maybe it's not meant for me. But we got to remember that, for that even when a woman is as qualified as a man for the same role, she's likely getting underpaid. So let's make sure that you know your worth, and know that you can ask for those raises, because you can make more money and start creating more generational wealth when you speak up and you ask for those rate increases.
I'll tell you that's absolutely true. I have done it and been successful in doing it we have really great allies, not just with the other women that we work with, but also with the men that we work with. I've noticed, and we have to give a shout out to the guys. We have really great male allies, I think, in our industry. Certainly, I've had them throughout my career, and I have had that conversation, and I have made changes based on those conversations by advocating for myself. So it's not just words, it's not just advice, although it's really great advice, and we should always be telling each other that, particularly the younger women coming up in the career and growing that path, is that you should have those conversations. It can if you handle them the right way, it can only help you do better.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we embrace all parts of this to make that change. And it does have to start with ourselves. I love everything you're saying because boy, you're teeing it all up in terms of what I was really passionate about talking about today, but also in this book. And my introduction when you all read it, because I want you to read it, because you're like, oh yes, this is what we're talking about, Melissa, is that this is very much an encouraging call to action for people to raise their own hands, right? We can't be waiting to be invited, to be tapped, to be chosen to be published. We didn't even do that, ladies. So I think it's really important, and we're not taking anything away from anyone else by inviting ourselves to some of these tables, to better pay, to help in spaces we're not in. So I think the more that we normalize that and say that that's kind too, it's a good thing to do. I think it's helpful for all of us.
Well, I do want to say thank you for being a trailblazer, being able to write the first Latinas in PR book. You are making a difference. You're basically raising your hand and you're saying, I'm going to show you the power of Latinas in PR. So, Melissa, really, your leadership is just totally admirable. And I'm honored to be part of the book with you and Rachel and the rest of the 12 other PR practitioners out there.
I love it. I'm probably most excited that you all are getting to know each other, and it always seems quite divine how we're ending up on these episodes together. Everyone seems to have something in common, so I hope we're all super great PR friends after this. Well, I want to stay with you online all day, but PR people, getting them together, someone needs us somewhere. So, well, I'll kind of wrap with a question I like to ask all of my guests is, what does smart talk mean to you, Lilly?
Oh my goodness. Smart talk is having conversations that make you think, having conversations that make you maybe change your narrative and also, or I'm not going to say and, but or also reinforce your beliefs. So having conversations like the one that we just had, it's just getting so many things that Rachel was saying. I was like, I had to mute myself because otherwise this podcast would be the whole time. But having these conversations that are deep, that are meaningful, that are authentic, that are sharing perspectives, it's smart. It's not cool when people have conversations and they're not really moving the needle anyway. It's just best to have conversations that have meaning, that have meat, that have just so much power to make us think.
Great. And Rachel, what about your take on smart talk?
Everything Lily said.
So
No, I
smart,
mean,
Lilly.
yeah, yes. I love that you have that as your signature sort of moniker, right? Smart talk. It means so many things to so many different people, and what that means is that we can all really sort of connect with you on different levels. I think that smart talk it means sharing your examined and lived experiences. It means imparting knowledge and wisdom that served you. Speaking on what you know with confidence and an open heart. Also having to be ready to listen to discussions and feedback, and maybe think about how you're going to implement them in your thinking, or be open to changing your mind. That smart talk to me is something that's open, something that's honest, something that's sincere and shared, but also something that's flexible and malleable, and that we can influence each other's ways of thinking, even if it's something we may not agree on. Understanding and respecting and honoring those different perspectives. Those are the types of things that I see you doing, Melissa. Certainly, we've done that here in this conversation, though I think we all had a lot more in common than we realized we would have. And that's the beauty of having these conversations and making these connections. I talked about the importance of relationships, right? And Melissa, you and I really kind of got to know each other in the past year, mostly, even though we've crossed paths for years. But having these conversations and sharing all of the things that I just described made me feel like I really know you and knew you when we started to get to know each other, if that makes sense. I feel like I've known you my whole career.
Yeah.
You represent a lot of what I want to see in myself, a lot of what I look for in others. And I think that you'll find that a lot of the authors and just people who have come across your brand and the things that you offer would say the same.
When Rachel said, respect one another through conversation, it is so absolutely right. So much discord is happening in this world because everybody has their own opinions. But if we just respect what they have to say, and just like Rachel said, listen and be curious, and then just move on, like knowing that they may not just change your mind right away, but if they make you inquisitive about your beliefs, then just, again, be curious, be aware that we're all different. There's so many millions of people, meaning there's millions of perspectives. Just be respectful and then move on. You don't have to argue. You don't have to accept what they believe, but be respectful, be curious, and then move on, and just be strong with your beliefs. And then they make you change your mind, then so be it. But I just love that Rachel said, be respectful and, move on and be a good listener.
Melissa, I'm going to be a good listener for sure. I'm going to quote one of our fellow authors and friend here in San Antonio, Dr. Lorraine Pulido, who used to always tell me, en hablando se entiende la gente. And what that means is, we used to communicate a lot in email and text, and she would just pick up the phone and call me. So let's have a conversation. And that's smart talk, right? Figuring out when it's time to have that conversation. And even if it's just to remind you and to understand that people have different perspectives than your own. And even if that's all you walk away with from one of those conversations, then that's touched your heart and mind. And that's really what we all should be striving for.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not always easy, but it's always worth it. And I think one of the biggest gifts I'm probably giving to society is trying to champion this more intelligent, open, respectful, more nimble type of communication, and particularly with my kids. We were just having this conversation yesterday. I'm like, I think it's time for you to end this, one participation spot that you've had for a long time. It's time to move on, and you just have to talk and tell, the leader that it's time for you to move on because you have other interests and not ghost and whatnot. So I love it, and let's keep passing it forward, ladies. Well, we could probably smart talk all day, but I want to let you get back to your very important work, but leave our listeners with a way to connect with you. So what's the best way for them to find you?
If you're interested in my work in PR, you're interested in me as a communicator, learning more about what I do here in San Antonio with our PRSA chapter, absolutely look for me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to connect there. That's probably the best way. If you want to see pictures of my dogs, then connect with me on Facebook or Instagram.
I was talking and my mic was off. You are more than welcome to find me on LinkedIn. I have both my personal as well as my company LinkedIn page. You can find me under Lilly Cortés Wyatt. And if you want to connect with me and also just see my dogs, my Labradoodle, Ted Murphy, who is my assistant here at SociosPR, you can find me on Facebook, Lilly Cortés Wyatt as well. And then you can find our company page on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook under SociosPR Agency.
I love it. And they have very cute dogs, very popular dogs, as you can tell. Well, thank you, Rachel and Lilly, for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge with us today.
And I love that you said we can totally smart talk all day, because that is 100% truth.
Thank you, Melissa, very much. Thank you, Lilly, for sharing all of that.
Thanks to our listeners for joining me for today's episode. We love covering communication topics that elevate our industry practice. If you'd like to go deeper, you can work with me as a coach, trainer, consultant, or hire my firm, MVW Communications, for strategic communication and public relations services. My industry books, Smart Talk, Public Relations Essentials All Pros Should Know, and Latinas in Public Relations, Shaping Communications, Communities, and Culture, are also available for purchase on Amazon. Grab your copy there, and please leave us a supportive review. Book reviews and podcast reviews help more aspiring or hardworking pros find our resources. As always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.